really wanted to talk about that was pissing me off on the highest level at the hypocrisy of the entire thing. Barry Bonds was not let into the Baseball Hall of Fame by the writers. He came 66%, which fell short of the 75% mark. He is now shut out, at least in the writers' ballot of the Hall of Fame. First of all, travesty. You keep the man's records, you have everything else like that, and you don't let this guy was literally, and I'll say it, I don't care who disagrees with it or whatever. This was the greatest fucking baseball player that ever lived. All around, he's the greatest baseball player that ever lived. The best hitter, the best all-around player that ever lived. The only player with 500 home runs and 500 steals. Okay. You got to remember, before his quote unquote, and Max Kellerman, I heard him this morning, he brought it up actually perfectly. It wasn't until he was about 35, 36 to when he started quote unquote juicing. Before then, Pirates and first few years with the Giants, he had already had a Hall of Fame worthy career. He was already leading the league in steals. He was already hitting the shit out of the ball out of the park. You know, so the fact that basically from 35 on to when he retired at, I think, I want to say he was early 40s when he finally retired, but it was in 2005. The thing that pisses me off the most, people are scapegoating and using the whole steroid shit as their reasoning for him not being in the Hall of Fame. Bullshit. Don't ever let anybody tell you that is the reason why it's happening, because it's a load of crap and it's not worthy of conversation. Okay. What's really going on is that he didn't have a great relationship with the media. That's really what it was. You know, he rude to him, didn't give him time, whatever the fuck it was. The media, petty as shit, couldn't get over the fact that they weren't given the attention. So all these writers and stuff like that use that as a way to not vote him in. They say it's because of the steroids, but they didn't start, first of all, testing for steroids until 2005. And the HGH that he was supposedly on at that time wasn't illegal. It wasn't on the banned substance list. So that means anybody at that time could have and probably was using that HGH. He had never been dinged for PEDs, ever. Never been suspended for PEDs, ever. Always came clean, acquitted in court. All of that. So to say that it was because it was because of steroids, even though there's no evidence that he did it illegally, is horseshit, because his history with the media is very well documented. Okay. Obviously it's well documented because it's still being used against it. The fact that Bud Selig, former commissioner, I believe it was from late 80s to about 2005, 2006, when he finally handed the reins over to Manfred. Bud Selig overlooked the entire steroid era and did nothing about it. The league was dying. It had just come out of a lockout a couple of years before. And what brought it back to life? The home run race between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire.
Mm-hmm.
That brought baseball back to life. That brought eyes to the game of baseball. So if anything did come across Selig's desk about them taking steroids or HGH, whatever the fuck it was, he turned a blind eye. He let that happen because he knew the league was dying and he needed some sort of income to come into the league before it was officially dead. So he let the players basically do whatever it was that they wanted to do, as long as they weren't getting dinged for it or whatever the case may be. You know, so the fact that he's in the Hall of Fame, even though he let the entire era take place, you've got Other guys, if you're looking at character issues, you got Ty Cobb, great baseball player, huge racist. He's in the Hall of Fame. You had another guy who played in the, I forgot what his name was, played in the 1920s or whatever. He actively tried to prevent black players from getting into baseball. He's in the Hall of Fame. So don't give me this character bullshit, because character, that it's a lie. It's a fucking lie. It has everything to do with these, and these same writers, by the way, are the same ones who gave him his record-holding 7 MVPs. He's good enough to be your MVP, but he can't get into the fucking Hall of Fame. You can kiss my ass. Kiss my fucking ass. Okay? It's bullshit. Clemens, great pitch. I mean, I'm literally more pissed off of Bonds that Bonds isn't in, because literally Bonds, like I said, is the greatest overall baseball player that ever fucking laced up the pair of cleats on the baseball diamond. Bar none. Nobody was a better hitter than he was. Nobody was a better pure athlete than he was. And to think it wasn't until he was 36 from the time he got into the league when he was 20, 21 years old. So 16 years, 15, 16 years of his career. Nobody's paying attention to that. Nobody's paying attention to the numbers that he put up early on in his career. Why? Because he wowed you with the 73 home runs in the season. 700, was it 763 or 753 or whatever the final home run tally for him? You know, leads, the amount of records that this man has. 7 MVPs. Guess who the number 2 guy? Guess how many MVPs he has? 3. 3 MVPs for the second. Barry Bonds has 4 more MVPs than the next best guy. And we're talking history. We're talking back in the Babe Ruth days, you know, all that shit. We're talking the history. 7 MVPs. And you're going to tell me this man isn't worth Hall of Fame? I mean, first ballot? He should have been first ballot. I mean, for sure. Like, but for the writers to literally sit there and try and act like they're taking the moral high. Oh, it's for the integrity of the Hall of Fame. Fuck you. That's a load of shit, and you know it. It's a crock of shit, and you know it. I can't wait for some of these writers to finally, I'm sorry, I can't wait for some of the writers to finally fucking die off. All these old heads who think they're giving all the integrity and all that bullshit. They let Bud Selig do whatever it was that he wanted to with the league because it was generating money. He let the steroid era happen. He's in the Hall of Fame. Put Bonds in. Like that's just, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but for me, Barry Bonds was the reason why I even liked baseball when I was a kid. Even when I lived in Texas before I came here into California to really get to know who I knew who Barry Bonds was when he was with the Pirates. I had already heard his name from there. So when he got to San Francisco, Barry Bonds is the reason why Oracle Park is there. He is the reason why their stadium is where it is, or that they even had a new stadium outside of Candlestick. Barry Bonds is the reason for that. The splash hits, you know, all that other, that's all Barry Bonds. The effect that he had on this game, the effect that he had on the people of San Francisco, the Bay Area people who love Giants baseball or whatever it may have been. There is absolutely zero reason why Barry Bonds shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And it's a joke. The Hall of Fame is a joke. The entire thing is, you want to talk about integrity and character and all that. If we're talking about character and integrity, probably half of the motherfuckers that are in the goddamn Hall of Fame shouldn't even be in there. You let this is no disrespect to David Ortiz. He got in first ballot. Congratulations to Big Poppy. Do I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer at the DH position? Absolutely. Was he Barry Bonds? No. Did he get dinged for PEDs? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But he was nice to the media. That's the underlying difference from this whole thing. Like, whoever's watching, listening, whatever, don't let the steroid. That is not the reason why Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame. The main reason Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame is because the writers are a bunch of pussies. That's it. Period. Print out. That's it. There's no other reason besides they got their feelings hurt. He wasn't very nice to us. Get another fucking job. Cover somebody else. Not all of these athletes are going to love you guys. Matter of fact, most of them don't because they know the media is bullshit. That's what we're trying to fix here at the All Pro JAFFOs. It's just the amount of hypocrisy that's in the MLB Hall of Fame or in the MLB period. It's baffling to me. How do you guys feel? Like, do you got Matt Six? We got the Barry Bonds poster right there in your studio right there. How do you feel about all this?
That's some definitely some bullshit. He should have been in there. Like I grew up playing baseball, and then like I didn't really watch it on TV because I was just baseball was boring as fuck to watch on TV. So, but it wasn't until like the whole Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, and all them just start cracking them that made me start watching. I'm like, this dude out here smacking them out the whole goddamn park, like So, so yeah, he definitely should have been in there, and just it's definitely some bullshit. But hey, what can you do? There,
boycott baseball.
Talk about it. Yeah, I don't really watch baseball anyway. So
until Barry Bonds is in the Baseball Hall of Fame, this show will not be covering baseball.
Yeah, I don't pay it to really pay.
This is the last coverage of baseball that we will have until Barry Bonds is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And again, it could still happen because there's that the Players Committee, the Hall of Fame Players Committee. They have basically a final say after the 10-year point is up. I mean, it used to be 15, but I mean, they dropped it down to 10. But in December, I believe it is, I think it's called the Today's Game Committee. Generic, stupid name. But that committee, has put in players that haven't made the writers' opinion of the Hall of Fame and everything else like that. So do I think he's going to get in? Yes. But when I say we're boycotting, but we're not going to be covering baseball on the show until Barry Bonds gets it in, I mean Barry Bonds gets in on the writers' ballot, which obviously can't happen anymore. So, hey, fuck you, MLB. You just, screwed yourself out of a hole. And during a lockout, man, your writers got some balls, bro. Your writers really think that their shit don't stink and that the game of baseball isn't dying. Right? You guys are basically on the same path as soccer in the US right now. Like it's nobody again, like you said, boring as fuck to watch the game of baseball on TV, let alone for 162 games. Just, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Baseball is only interesting in the playoffs, and even that's not as interesting anymore. Yeah, I think they probably should have kept steroids fucking in the game. It probably would have made it more interesting. It's ridiculous, man. It's just one of those things that just, again, I grew up watching Barry Bonds. I've seen him in person. I've seen his games. What that guy was able to do. Not just like a power standpoint, from the fact that just on contact, his ability to make contact, his slugging percentage, just his ability to make contact was better than everyone at any point in any time. You know, I just don't understand how the greatest baseball player that ever lived is not in the Hall of Fame. The writers are just, they're so full of shit.